The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has arraigned 11 Chinese nationals on charges of cyber fraud, identifying theft, and an alleged attempt to undermine Nigeria's constitutional structure. The defendants appeared before the Federal High Court in Lagos on Tuesday, where they pleaded not guilty to the charges. This development comes just a day after the Anti-Graft Agency arraigned 42 Chinese and Filipino nationals for similar offences before the same court. According to the EFCC, the foreign nationals were apprehended during a raid codenamed Eagle Flush Operation, conducted on 19 December 2024 in Lagos. Following the not guilty plea, Justice Chikwe Ihekweazu ordered their remand at the Ikoyi Correctional Center in Lagos. Let's take you now to South Africa, where the recent decision by former U.S. President Donald Trump to cut funding to South Africa and launch an investigation into its land reform policies has sparked a diplomatic firestorm. Trump's claim that the new Expropriation Act constitutes a massive human rights violation against white landowners has drawn sharp criticism from the South African government, which argues that the law is a constitutional mechanism aimed at redressing historical injustices. At the heart of this controversy is a long-standing issue in South Africa, the redistribution of land to address racial disparities entrenched by apartheid-era policies. While proponents of the law see it as a necessary step towards economic justice, opponents, including some South African opposition parties, warn that it could undermine property rights and deter foreign investment. Well, I'm being joined now by Sanusha Nato, policy analyst. Thank you so much for being here this morning on News Now. Let's get straight into it. South Africa's land expropriation law is currently under scrutiny. Before we delve into the controversy, can you explain to us what necessitated this law and what it aims to actually achieve?
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers. The law essentially is the kind of reconstitution of the 1975 Act, which essentially gives an unfair advantage to certain people in the context of access to land. It also goes back to the 1913 Land Act, which essentially took away almost 85% of the land from native South Africans and gave it to white South Africans in terms of this 85-13% construct. So in other words, what the Expropriation Act or bill was about was essentially to rectify imbalances of the past, where like in your country, like in anywhere in the world, I think there's no such thing as exceptionalism to what South Africa is doing, is that land becomes a critical identity, a critical ideology, a critical access, where people have, in terms of the law, been legislatively dispossessed, and now we're trying to reconstitute that, redress that act. And so when you talk about the Expropriation Act and that act that was signed into law by the president, you've got to look at context, because those opponents that are saying that it's going to take away land from or dispossess property owners, etc., don't really understand that it doesn't do that. It's still based on a willing buyer, willing seller model, which is what the African National Congress has always projected and put forward. If you look at the act itself, it's based on the Constitution. And the Constitution is very clear about the question of redress and how do you deal with that. So I think there's a lot of interesting noise that is being made, but people who are uninformed, ignorant, like President Trump, who's just kind of shooting from the hip, because it's not about how it's going to be dispossessed. It's not about basically challenging ownership right now and saying, oh, we're going to go in and start dispossessing, taking away farms. It's about how you define the public interest. And remember, this bill was in the parliament, in the 5th and 6th parliament, under discussion when members of the GNU, those that are sitting in the GNU, also opposed this bill then. But it got ratified in a very kind of broad way.
All right. I want us to examine this further, in as much as we're looking at the expropriation laws. Now, some persons have argued, especially critics, that new act allows for expropriation without compensation, and therefore it lacks clear parameters. Is that accurate?
Well, it says expropriation at the base of nil, but that's still not necessarily, the clarification of that could be tested in a court of law. It could be under a litigation. And that's what is important to understand, is that everybody is kind of making assumptions and making projections about this where we haven't really tested this law. We haven't really seen what this law is going to do in terms of this expropriation or compensation. In fact, if you look at the reports of the 5th and 6th Parliament in terms of this act, and when it came to be approved, it was approved by the ANC members in the committee in the 6th Parliament. It was not approved by the EFF nor the DA. Both those parties objected to the bill in terms of one in the context of what expropriation means, and the other in the context of the idea that expropriation without compensation will actually continue to further dispossess people who who illegitimately had their land taken away from them. Now, the question here is the public interest clause in the bill. Now, what the public interest clause is whether or not a land will be expropriated in the public interest if it is for indeed things like building infrastructure that is in the national interest. Here we'll have to see whether it gets tested around this compensation issue, because at the moment nobody actually knows what the compensation will look like unless we test it or unless it goes under litigation and there is a test case law around jurisprudence that tells us that this law may need to be reversed or not reversed but redefined in the context of compensation. So right now we don't know, and everybody's just looking at it and talking about it rhetorically.
All right, let's look at President Ramaphosa and Elon Musk in the picture. I mean, a close associate of the United States President Donald Trump. Now, they have both spoken about alleged misinformation surrounding this issue. What outcome can we anticipate from this diplomatic row?
Well, I think the challenge here is that the assumption is being made that this law is going to basically inherently threaten certain race groups in South Africa. And of course, President Trump was very clear about, it's going to be bad, it's going to be very bad for white people in the country and so forth. What is important to bear in mind is that this is a national sovereign state. We are able to and we can make laws that don't necessarily affect the US. How does an expropriation law in South Africa affect the national interests of the United States? It's very unclear, it's very clumsy, and it seems to be just complete ignorance on the part of the Trump presidency.
Do you think, sorry to butt in, do you think that Elon Musk is possibly the one responsible for all of this?
I don't know. I can't answer that question with any certainty. That's a speculation which you'll need to ask Mr. Elon Musk if he is responsible for. And that is what we're trying to get away from, because this whole thing around the interpretation of the act, the law, etc., seems to be caught in a lost in translation. So I can't tell you that because I don't have the evidence to tell you that. You'll have to ask Mr. Elon Musk what does he think, is he responsible? But this misinformation and disinformation campaign about the law, I think needs to be looked at in the context of how people are looking at it on social media spaces. And I think what is important for us to bear in mind is that you mentioned earlier the question of certain opposition members or parties being objecting to it. Well, what has happened subsequently is that the response to Mr. Trump and to those detractors that have come out against the law, whether in the US or elsewhere, is that the government of national unity has come out in a collective way and said, no, the interpretation. Even Mr. Steenhuisen, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, who is the Minister of Agriculture in the GNU, has come out and also said, let me clarify a few things. So I think this has for the first time shown a level of collectiveness where the GNU has said, we're not going to allow this to derail us.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot to bite on this, maybe more than we can chew, but I'm sure as time goes by, a lot will be unfolded. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for speaking with us this morning on News Now. Well, let's get back to Nigeria's Ebonyi State, where the death toll from the attack on 3 villages in Ishelu local government has now risen to 15, with many residents still believed to be missing. Alleged armed headsmen reportedly stormed the communities on Sunday, leaving destruction and death in the wake of the attack. Initial reports put the death toll at 10, but more bodies have since been discovered in the bush. bringing the total number of fatalities to at least 15, according to local officials. The attack has sparked widespread outrage and concerns, with Deputy Governor Patricia Obila visiting the affected community to condemn the violence. She has given security agencies a 24-hour ultimatum to track down the perpetrators and bring them to justice. The Inspector General of Police, Kayode Adeolu Egbetukun, says he's worried about what he calls the unwarranted and unethical practice of transferring ongoing cases and the misuse of public offices by certain public officials or officers. The IGP has vowed to penalize any police officer found misusing their position of authority to transfer case files without due process or just cause. He adds that such practices undermine investigations and diminish public confidence in the police. Well, earlier, we're joined by a human rights lawyer and former president of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, Malaki Ogumadu, who shared his thoughts on the implications of the unwarranted and unethical practice of transferring ongoing cases allegations of the IGP.
It is evidently clear that the IGA of police is referencing the practice, if you like, the unholy practice of transferring cases from one division or formation of the police force to another during investigation. What is not very clear to some of us is that that admonition had been given in the past. Some of us are aware, perhaps not under this particular Inspector General of Police, that that directive had been given in the past. In fact, on many occasions, as a practicing lawyer who has multiple reasons to interface with the police at every division and formation up to the headquarters, I'm aware that this is a standing order. The fact that it is now being re-emphasized and reiterated goes to the issue of the inability of the force to put a definitive end to this. The IG clearly has been clear. I mean, it's quite succinct and clear about what he means. He puts it directly. The communication was effective. What is not very clear is why it has persisted, even in spite of that directive. And this is quite consistent with what we are now used to.
President Bola Tinubu has signed into law the bill establishing the North Central Development Commission. The development was revealed by the President of the Nigerian Senate, Godswill Akpabio, at the resumption of plenary activities on Tuesday, emphasizing the Commission's role in promoting equitable development in the North Central and across Nigeria. With the passage of NCDC bill to law, Nigeria now has 5 established regional development commissions catering for its different regions, including the Niger Delta Development Commission, Northeast Development Commission, Northwest Development Commission, Southeast Development Commission, and also just passed the North Central Development Commission.
Future endeavors. Let me also inform our colleagues that Mr. President has also assented to the North Central Development Commission Establishment Bill 2024 in order to bring development to the grassroots. And for this, we congratulate the good people of the North Central region of Nigeria. And then we wish them more development, particularly peace, as we forge ahead in the task of nation building. The clerk.
Well, let's move on now to a next story and tell you that when we come back, we'll take a look at this story in particular. Federal government commences tolling on the Abuja-Makurdi Road. We have details of this story and more, but that will be shortly after this time out. Stay with us. Nigeria's Federal Executive Council has approved the payment of pension liabilities amounting to the sum of 758 billion naira to pensioners under the nation's defined pension benefit system, which precedes the current pension system. The Council, during their deliberation today, approved the Debt Management Office to raise federal government bonds so as to effectively clear the liabilities and bring relief to those being owed. Our correspondent Amadine Uyi reports.
Another Federal Executive Council meeting, the second for the year 2025. In attendance were several cabinet ministers, as several memos were submitted and considered.
There were about 67 memos considered by the Federal Executive Council today. Each one of them was being thoroughly examined and approved. Some, of course, were a step down, as you had earlier. Now, if you aggregate all this together, and this by way of recap, you're saying that a lot of projects between yesterday and today, approvals given, for example, to the Ministry of the FCT, to the Ministry of Works, to Health.
The Minister of Finance says that the Council approved the payment of backlog of pension arrears owed pensioners under the nation's old pension scheme.
Addressing the issue of social interventions is one regarding pensions. There was an approval for the government through the Debt Management Office to raise a federal government bond of about 758 billion naira. And that is to clear up the backlog of pension liabilities owed various categories of pensioners who are owed funds under the defined benefit system that preceded the defined contributory pension scheme that came into force in 2004 and of course was updated with a new act in 2014.
Also, the Minister of Health says that major decisions concerning the health sector was considered, including the upgrade of infrastructure in several key health institutions.
Today, it considered two decisions related to the health sector. One is far-reaching and has continental implications. Nigeria, based on the approval of the Federal Executive Council today, will be ratifying the Africa Medicines Agency Treaty. That is a treaty which was initially brought into life by the Africa Union heads of states and governments at their 32nd meeting in Addis Ababa in February 2019. So today, the Federal Executive Council approved 6 contracts for major diagnostic equipment, 3 MRI equipment, and 2 CT scan equipment.
The Council also approved several key projects under the Works Ministry amounting to billions of naira. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
The federal government has officially begun tolling operations on the Abuja-Kefi-Akwanga-Lafia-Makurdi Road corridor as part of efforts to repay the $460.8 billion loan secured from China Exim Bank for the rehabilitation and upgrade of the highway. Motorists using the route will now pay tolls ranging from 500 naira for silent cars to 1,600 naira for multi-axle vehicles, while police and military vehicles are exempted to facilitate their operations. The toll gates are strategically positioned along the 227.2-kilometer stretch are divided into 4 sections: Kefi, Akwanga, Lafia, and Makurdi. Speaking at the official launch of tolling operations at the Garaku toll station in Nasarawa State, the Minister of Works, David Umahi, reaffirmed the government's commitment to sustainable road maintenance and infrastructure funding. All the way from that, in a story that News Central TV has been following, residents of Bello Street in Ikosi-Ketu, Lagos, are calling on the government and appropriate agencies to intervene after demolition teams moved in unexpectedly, threatening to pull down marked buildings without prior notice. Residents say as of now, some buildings already have had roofs, fences and other parts taken out. They say the Onikosi of Ikosi, who is the traditional ruler of the areas behind the demolitions. Though certain court documents have been presented, the residents say they still feel the demolitions are illegal. Well, let's take a look at this story even more.
It was an unusual and tense morning here on Bello Street, Ketu. News Central arrived after receiving distress calls from residents who claim their houses were about to be demolished without warning. Several buildings had been marked for demolition, but according to the residents, no proper notice was given.
My landlord didn't say anything about demolition or receiving anything when I rented out this place. And even till now, there's still no papers that has been shown to me. Then I asked around from the bailiffs that I saw, like, what exactly is going on? They said they have an order to demolish this old line for the street. They wrote like almost this on every house on this side of the street. And before our agents got here, we already lost a bit of security, which is our fence that covers the security of the house, the store. I'm very confused, I'm tired, I've cried because I'm really not sure what's going on.
While inspecting the area, it became clear that some buildings had been marked for demolition, but the markings appeared selective, raising questions about why certain properties were targeted while others remained untouched.
At this point, selected houses like this were marked with this identification. Some has gotten their fence down, all because of these documents. This is not a new house. This belongs to my father. The land, I built the house on it, renovated. How come the Oba Lukosi will just decide to come out of the blue moon and say they are taking possession? Waking up overnight to now say you want to take possession. Look at the house beside. The house is not included. The next house is not included. This house is not included. Why is it that selected house is being included?
Many affected residents, some whom had lived in the area for decades, are now calling on the Lagos state government to intervene before they lose their homes entirely.
Mo ti wà mí báyìí láti 88 ọkọ mi ti kú tí mo ti ń forí fa gbogbo wàhálà ẹ̀ tí mo wà nínú omi nínú ìdààmú pákó ni máa tò sílẹ̀ fi roko ń bí báyìí tọ́lọ́run fi ń bá mi tún bí báyìí ṣe tó di láàárọ̀ ìṣàlẹ̀ nìkan wá ń gbálẹ̀kùn gbàgbàgbàgbàgbà ìgbà tán ní wọ́n fẹ́ túnlẹ̀ yìí ta o kíjọba dìde kó ràn mí lọ́wọ́ o torí mi ìlẹ́nì kankan àfọlọ́run.
However, a man who claimed to be the son of the Onikosi, the traditional ruler of the area, spoke off camera. He alleged that landlords had been notified about the demolition plans and invited for discussions, but failed to attend. The situation remains unclear, with conflicting accounts from residents and local authorities. News Central will continue to seek responses from government officials to understand why these demolitions are taking place and whether due process was followed. In Lagos for News Central, I'm Bernard Akede.
All away from that story now, the European Union-funded Rule of Law and Anti-Corruption Program says it has commenced works with the Nigerian Bar Association to remove Nigeria from the list of high-risk countries notorious for money laundering, terrorism, financing, and also the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. The program manager made this known during a two-day sensitization workshop in the nation's capital, Abuja, on the rules of professional conduct for legal practitioners. Our correspondent, Joshua Imarayi, has more details.
Over 300 lawyers from across the country. The organizers say that the primary objective is to educate lawyers on their expected roles in moving Nigeria from the grey list of the Global Financial Action Task Force.
The NBA should be in the lead of ensuring that the fight against money laundering, countering the funding of terrorists, and countering the proliferation of small arms is in force. Doing that is ensuring that every lawyer understands the rules of their professional conduct, as well as their mandatory compliance rule.
The president of the Nigerian Bar Association assured that the NBA is sanitizing its house and warned that lawyers found guilty of engaging in unethical practices will be punished, while violators will be held accountable.
While we may not achieve 100% compliance level at the profession, we want to instill confidence in the public that we are interested in ensuring that members of the public adhere to the highest standards. So it is a headache, and our disciplinary process must also be seen to work to ensure that those who violate our rules of professional conduct are brought to book, because that's the only way we can show the society that we have the capacity and the willingness to take out of the profession those who give the profession a bad name.
The organizers say that the two-day national sensitization event will serve as a training of trainers workshop with participants drawn from all 130 NBA branches across the country. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imbalayi.
Thanks for staying with us. To the energy sector we go now in the news. International oil and gas company ExxonMobil Upstream has commended President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for his commitment to expanding investment in Nigeria's deep water basin as part of efforts to grow the nation's oil and gas reserves. The outgoing president of the company made this known following a visit to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the State House in Abuja, saying that the federal government's focus on expanding oil and gas reserves through investment in the deep water will immensely benefit citizens and add value to the nation.
Over the last a few things. First of all, again, strong support from this administration to make the transition of our shallow water business to Seplat Energy. We're very excited. That will unlock potential for all of Nigeria. That's number one. And secondly, the administration's support, in particular with the president's directives to encourage investment in the deep water, will, in my view, set us up for many years to come with many exciting developments. So this administration has been extremely supportive of the potential to expand oil and gas, low emissions oil and gas in this country. Very supportive.
We've completed the divestment of the joint venture, and so we're looking forward now on a refocused business focused on deep water. We have a lot of exciting prospects and opportunities that I've reviewed with the team just yesterday, and we're looking forward to advancing those as quickly as we can with the support of the President's directives, the support of the government, and we're very excited about the future here.
The former Director-General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, Chikwe Ihekweazu, has been appointed as the acting regional director of the World Health Organization, WHO, in Africa. He was appointed on Tuesday at the ongoing 156th session of the WHO Executive Board in Geneva, Switzerland. Announcing the appointment, Tedros Ghebreyesus, who is the WHO Director General, expressed confidence that Africa would be in capable hands for the next 4 months. A new regional director for Africa is set to be elected in May 2025. The former NCDC DG takes over from Matshidiso Moeti, who has finished her term.
I'm pleased that the Regional Committee for Africa has decided to nominate a new regional director as soon as possible, and I look forward to working with whomever they choose. And I'm pleased to announce that I have appointed Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu as acting regional director until the new regional director is nominated and appointed by the Executive Board following the World Health Assembly. Chikwe joined WHO in 2021 and is currently the Assistant Director General and Deputy Executive Director of the WHO Health Emergency Preparedness and Response Program in Geneva. Prior to joining WHO, he was the first Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. I'm confident that for the next 4 months, the region is in very capable hands, just as it has been for the past 10 years. My sister Shidi, we all owe you an immense debt of gratitude for everything you have done, but also for who you are. Thank you for your example you have set and the legacy you have left. You believe that the people of Africa deserve nothing but your best, and that's what you have given for the past 10 years. I also look forward to continuing to work with you in whatever you decide to do next. As we say, once WHO, always WHO.
Welcome back. Some shops are reopening in the eastern DR Congo city of Goma after the Rwandan-backed armed group M23 announced a humanitarian ceasefire. The ceasefire comes just days before a planned crisis meeting between the Congolese and Rwandan leaders amid tensions that have destabilized the region for decades. Last week, M23 and Rwandan forces seized Goma, the provincial capital of North Kivu, a mineral-rich region long plagued by violence from multiple armed groups. Although fighting has stopped in the city, home to more than 1 million people, clashes have spread to the neighboring province of South Kivu, raising fears of an M23 push towards its capital, Bukavu. While no fighting was reported on Tuesday, military and local sources say all sides continue to send reinforcements and equipment into the region. People displaced by the ongoing war in Sudan are returning to their home city of Wad Madani in central Al Jazeera state. This follows the Sudanese army's recapture of the city from the Rapid Support Forces paramilitaries who had taken control. In January, when the military reclaimed Wad Madani, celebratory chants erupted in displacement centers across the country, including Port Sudan, the de facto capital on the Red Sea. By Tuesday, State Governor Al-Taher Ibrahim had welcomed hundreds of returnees from Western Al Jazeera alone, marking the beginning of a wider repatriation effort.
هنا أولادنا ذاتهم بشرونا بالوضع وبشرونا هنا البلد نظيفة وما آمنة وما في أي مشكلة والهنا الأكل متوفر ما في حاجة بس لكن الكهرباء والموية بس.
والله علينا ما بنقول لك ما علينا لكن الحمد لله جزاء من رب العالمين ربنا يقبل دعانا.
مبسوطين بسطة شديدة والله وفرحانين لبيوتنا طبعا أهم حاجة ولأهلنا ولإخواننا ولجيراننا ولأحبابنا كلهم إن شاء الله وربنا يوصلنا ويسترنا في الدارين.
Let's tell you that citizens of the Gambia filling out forms to apply for a temporary migration program to Spain. During a tour of Mauritania, the Gambia and Senegal in August 2024, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez pledged to develop circular migration schemes. These programs would allow migrants to work in Spain under fixed-term contracts to fill labor shortages in specific sectors before returning home. The pledge was part of broader agreements with the three countries aimed at strengthening cooperation to combat human trafficking and promote legal migration.
Allah fatala doku aninyi nindiro because jang yemo moja aka famine aka doku kele but buka fence roje wala na kabiri opportunity nata dorong kay ngata eta je yete harje nyin nata ta je mi expect wala ñu ngay doku ke nyama nyanta kala nyami anyanta jola nyami nga jowa o nyama ni se wato sita ni ko nana e nanang ole wodoron na basi kanje.
Is that where we are going? We are expecting a work there. By the grace of Allah, when we go there, we are going to fulfill our promise. As we go through the list, there are so many points where they mentioned whether we can work or we can work every time. But I believe when we go there, inshallah, we will do our best to make them a satisfaction.
Man silma yakar ka simbiri baby la wa man silola yakar wa so de sinege simbiri baby la mom bobu mom du problème parce que man fi dem ko lay def right now duma wax ak yow ni ma nga am suma garden dama def soble dama def comme malo sa dam koy bey ci temps bi nawet waaw parce que man xamna comme mbiri bey mom nu mel waaw man nak ci lolou la yakar parce que ci lolou ci mbiri lolou la dégg tamit pour bu mako dégg tamit happy na ci lolou torop.
Just to watch the news now here on News Central Television. A prison riot in Villahermosa, the capital of Tabasco State, has left 7 people dead. The incident, which occurred in a state already grappling with escalating criminal violence, is under investigation by the local prosecutor's office. Local reports said the violence erupted from a confrontation between rival criminal groups within the facility. This latest outbreak follows a similar riot in December that also claimed 7 lives. In recent months, Tabasco has witnessed a surge in violent crime with 2 separate gun attacks on bars in Villahermosa in late 2024, resulting in 13 fatalities. Violence linked to drug cartels has led to the deaths of more than 480,000 people since the Mexican government intensified its crackdown on trafficking in 2006. Let's tell you that former UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya has slipped 2 places to 4th in the official UFC rankings following a second-round TKO loss to Nasruddin Imavov at UFC Fight Night 250 in Saudi Arabia. The Nigerian-born New Zealander has now lost 3 consecutive fights in the past year, having previously been defeated by Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. Imavov's victory propelled him to 2nd in the middleweight rankings ahead of Khamzat Chimaev. Adesanya started strong against Imavov but was dropped in the 2nd round by a powerful right hand before being finished with an uppercut and ground strikes. Despite the setback, Adesanya remains optimistic, posting on social media, "I'll be back, gone to get some milk," end of quote. And that's all the news we have for you for this hour. Don't forget to watch News Central live on the following news platforms wherever you are: on DSTV channel 422, Star Times, and of course stream live on YouTube.